Greetings, computer science enthusiasts, and today we're going to be looking at the while loop. Before I get into the while loop, though, I want to talk about a concept that I've been working with as I've shown you some other videos. So up here, you notice that I've got some code that basically creates two variables, a variable x and a variable y. Both of those variables have been initialized at the value 0, so they both start out at 0. So the difference between the two situations here is for x, I've done x++, and for y, I've done y is equal to y plus 1. What I want to highlight here is those two pieces of code actually do the exact same thing. So if I start out at 0 and I x++, I'll print out a 1. If I start out at 0 and I y equal y plus 1, I'll still print out a 1. Because when you take 0 and you add 1 to it, you get 1. And that's what both of these things do. When you're looking at text programming, more often than not, you see it written like this. But I've noticed that in working with blocks, it's a lot easier to do this. So since they provide the exact same level of functionality, I think I'm going to go with this version as opposed to going with the other version. So I just wanted to kind of point that out and let you know that I'll be using this type of block style to do incrementing from here on out because it's just easier to do in working with blocks. You don't have to switch back and forth between the blocks and the text. Now let's start talking about the while loop. So the while loop is another way to repeat a block of code over and over and over again, as many times as you need to. However, its syntax is a little bit different than the for loop. It's structured a little bit differently. Right now, it might not be obvious why it would be a good idea to use one type of loop over another type of a loop. Later on, when we do a little bit more advanced programming, I can show you and highlight some ways in which it might be preferable to do a while loop over a for loop. But for right now, I'm just worried about making sure you understand the syntax of how a while loop works and kind of notice the differences between it and a for loop, and make sure that you can build a working while loop that doesn't blow up on you. So the while loop basically looks at its area and tries to see if a condition is true or not. Just like in a for loop, I think I'm going to use the same condition. I'm going to say, hey, some variable less than a value. And as long as that's true, our loop will run. And when that's not true, our loop will stop running. However, the while loop doesn't automatically make its own variable, so you're going to have to do that before you start the loop. So above the while loop, we want to create the value of x, or the variable x, and we want to assign it a value of 0. Then inside, we can print out that value. However, if you notice, if you just look at this program, we're not changing x at all. So this loop would always be true. If I start with x being 0 and I just keep asking the question, is 0 less than 3? Is 0 less than 3? Is 0 less than 3? No matter how many times I ask that question is always going to be true. So this would be bad if I just ran it like this, because this puts us in a situation that's called an infinite loop. It's a loop that never stops running. Usually in the computer that shows up as some form of error. When you're running Game Lab, it freezes your web browser and you have to actually restart the web browser and refresh the page to get back to where you're going. In terms of making a video, that's horrible, because if I have to refresh this page, it's going to exit out of the video as well. So I'm not going to run this and show you that it blows up and demonstrate that. You just need to do that on your own. What I will do, though, is to show you how to keep it from blowing up, and that is by creating an incrementer inside the loop. So inside the loop, I'm going to do my x is equal to x plus 1. All right, and so now as I read through the code, I'm going to say, hey, x is equal to 0. Is 0 less than 3? Yes. Well, let's print out x, and then let's add 1 to x and make it 1. Is 1 less than 3? Why, yes. Let's print out the 1, and let's make x go to 2. Is 2 less than 3? Why, yes. Let's print out the 2 and makes x go to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, 3 is not less than 3, so I exit the loop. You have to have a way of changing something, or something has to occur when this loop runs to modify this variable. If this variable never gets modified and it was true to begin with, it will always be true. So you've got to have a stop case that's kind of inside your loop. So if I go ahead and run this, you will see it produces the exact same output as the for loop did when we wrote a for loop like this. And it's almost the exact same syntax. This was the first piece of your for loop, this was the second piece, and this was the third. Now you just have to know where to put everything. The first piece of the for loop goes outside the while loop, and the second piece of the for loop is part of the while loop, and the third piece of the for loop is inside the while loop. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is, remember how when we were having a for loop and we wanted to print out 1, 2, 3 instead of 0, 1, 2, and so we had to go pick a different inequality statement, and we had to change up where we started. The cool thing about the while loop is you have a little bit more versatility. So if I move this incrementation above the printout inside the body, then you'll notice x starts out being 0. Is 0 less than 3? Yes, but then I immediately change x to 1 before I print it out. So now if I reset and run this code, notice that it prints out 1, 2, 3, and all I had to do was just change the order in which stuff executed inside my loop. So the while loop has a little bit more versatility than a for loop, but it's also got more responsibility, because if you forget to put this center block in here at all, then you're going to have problems, and we don't want problems. Once again, you can change things up to where it decrements. So I could say x is equal to 3. I could change this block right here from a greater, less than to a greater than. So as long as x is greater than 0, then I'm okay here. And I could change this from x plus 1 to x minus 1. And then let's move that down to below the output, and now it's going to count down from 3 to 1. So if I go ahead and reset and run, I've got 3, 2, 1 as my output, because I've decremented and I changed up my conditional and I changed my starting point. All right, that's about all there is to the while loop. Like I said, it's pretty much the same as the for loop with some very important syntactical differences. Be very, very careful about making sure that inside the body you've created something that will eventually allow the loop to stop running. So until next time, I want you to keep on coding and keep on creating.